Management Group, hosted by Craig and Leslie Bolanos Sunday mornings at 10. Learn more at investwithwmg.com.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. While animatronic Anthony Blinken was over in Kyiv playing Rockin' in the Free World.
I know. I mean, how embarrassing. Our world leaders are out there.
Plus, he's got a terrible voice. He may be able to play guitar, but...
he can't sing.
No. Anyway, NSA advisor... Jake from State Department, who is a diplomat in the same way that Jake from State Farm is an insurance broker, he stepped up to the podium to make this declaration to cover one side of the divide the Biden administration is trying to cover.
4, we believe Israel can and must do more to ensure the protection and well-being of innocent civilians. We do not believe what is happening in Gaza is a genocide. We have been firmly on record rejecting that proposition.
Oh, boy. That sort of a statement is going to make things a little chippy in Chicago when it's time for the DNC in a couple months. Don't think those campus model Hamas fascists are going to forget those words. But, even with the hedge, this is not a crowd, your party, that provides part of the base, the solidarity and marginality base of your party. Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Biden, Mr. President, this is not a group, I don't know if you've noticed, that accepts a hedge. They're not looking for half measures. So I don't know how that really covers the base. And frankly, I hope the other side that they're trying to cover, their loyal Jewish voters, also don't accept half measures and this fork-tonguedness coming from the administration, particularly when he delays a weapon shipment because they're trying to send a message to Bibi about a operation in Rafah to eliminate some of the substantial infrastructure that Hamas still has in place. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Peter Berkowitz, who's a senior fellow at the Hoover Institution, former director of policy planning in the State Department. His writings are posted at peterberkowitz.com. Peter, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
It's good to be with you. Thank you.
So you wrote a piece that speaks to this complicated position that Bibi is in addition to the complicated position that the Biden administration at least believes themselves to be in. So how Bibi can walk the line here to address the politics, I don't know if they're really concerns, address the politics of the Biden administration, as well as continue to forge a relationship with countries, with Islamic countries that had been ongoing during the Trump administration and has now seemingly stalled because of obviously what's transpired. So how does Bibi navigate this with the United States that's headed by a Biden?
Yes. So first, we have to underscore the difficulties as you've already done. The Biden administration was initially good. They had 10 good days. For the most part, weapons have continued to flow. But the Jake Sullivan statement that you just read illuminates the problem. It's not nearly enough for Sullivan to say, we don't agree that Israel has been engaged in genocide. Of course, Israel's not been engaged in genocide. It's engaged in a defensive war. But every day the Biden administration ought to be saying, we hold Hamas responsible for the death and destruction in Gaza because Hamas, in flagrant violation of the international laws of war, has turned the cities of Gaza into battlefields by operating inside the cities and under cities. So that's the first thing. The Biden administration is actually contributing to an extremely hostile international climate in which Israel must operate. The second part of it is that the United States, like Saudi Arabia, has declared that in order for them to assist Israel, Israel must affirm its commitment to a Palestinian state. Now, as you all know, that's an extremely heavy lift for Israel right now, where most Israeli citizens are thinking, why should we agree to a state on our border in which 70% of the population in Gaza and 70% of the population in Judea and Samaria, West Bank, approve of the October 7th atrocities? So that's the outline of the problem that Netanyahu faces.
And how does he navigate that? I mean, it seems to me, as he's sort of said, is like, look, I have a charge here. It's a moral imperative. It's an existential imperative to debilitate Hamas as much as is humanly possible, and that necessarily includes Rafah. And so while I appreciate perspectives from our friends in America, I got to do what I got to do, basically.
So I think that's right, and I suggested that there is a way for Netanyahu to thread this diplomatic needle, and he himself provides the model for it. Back in 2009, new President Barack Obama was putting pressure on the new Prime Minister, Bibi Netanyahu, to affirm support for a Palestinian state. And indeed, Netanyahu, in June 2009, became the first Israeli Prime Minister to declare his support for the creation of a Palestinian state. However, he laid down two conditions. One condition, that Palestinian state recognize Israel as the nation state of the Jewish people. Second, that Palestinian state be demilitarized. I think Netanyahu reasonably understood that the Palestinians could not agree to these entirely reasonable conditions. In other words, he found a way, by articulating his support for a Palestinian state under reasonable conditions, he placated the Americans, and he also reassured his own citizens that he would not do anything that endangered the security of Israel. It's more difficult now, but I think he could do something similar, because I think Palestinian leaders still are not nearly willing to agree to these reasonable conditions for a state, that it recognize Israel as the nation state of the Jewish people, and that it be demilitarized.
It's been said that the Saudis and certainly more peaceful pluralist elements in the Middle East, like the Jordanians, they want to give no quarter to Hamas. They have no affinity for Hamas and other Iran-backed terrorist organizations. So what is your handle on the efforts that were afoot, as exemplified by the Abraham Accords, and the relationships now in terms of the potential, the powder keg question about the Middle East? Does it have a potential to spiral beyond the Israelis and the Palestinians, or are most of those majority Muslim countries happy to sit on the sidelines?
They're in a difficult situation. The leaders of the states you mentioned, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Emirates, Egypt, would love to see Israel destroy Hamas. Hamas is the Palestinian branch of the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood targets these regimes. However, each of these regimes has populations, and the populations of which do not want to see death and destruction in Gaza. So they have a difficult they're in a difficult position. They got to maintain this balance, secretly wanting Israel to win, but openly assuring their population that they will look out for Palestinians. So they need something too, some outward sign that Israel is, at least in principle, supportive of a Palestinian state, even if it becomes clear that the realization of that state is very long term. In the short term, something reasonable from Israel would give, especially the Saudis and the Emiratis, working with the United States, an opportunity to provide much needed money for the rehabilitation, slow, steady rehabilitation of Gaza after Israel has completed its needed military operations there.
And what seems lost in all this is the hostages. And yesterday, during the memorial service for Israel, they were at Daley Plaza, and Hirsch Goldberg Poland, he's from Chicago, and his grandmother spoke, and his aunt, about that video that was released last week of the 23-year-old.
We just sat on the floor of my little house in Florida, watched it and cried and tried to analyze how he's looking. He had his hair shaved, now it's growing back. How's the arm that was blown off? Analyzing every little thing.
I mean, they're glad that they got to see the video, but there's just seems no urgency to try and get them back, even the fact that 5 of them are Americans.
It's hard to explain how the Biden administration has not every day said we demand the return of those hostages, how the Biden administration has not seen the struggle in Gaza as also directly, immediately an American struggle, as American citizens are being held hostage there. And you're entirely right. For the Israelis, for many Israelis, even a majority of Israelis, in addition to the 2 war aims that Netanyahu has rightly emphasized, destroying Hamas's ability to ever govern again and to ever wage war against Israel again, returning the hostages is a supreme goal. And the Hamas, mocks Israel, saying we're going to win because you all love life and we love more death. And the Israelis proudly say it's true. We are fighting and even risking ourselves because we love life, and we will not stop till we win the release of our hostage, of our citizens whom you hold hostage.
There was a report done by Uncover DC about the Biden administration's posture towards Gazan refugees. So the Gazan refugees, the entire Arab world has basically said no, not taking them, and the Biden administration is deferring adjudication of those in this country now already, while still contemplating and seeming to be pretty open-minded, if not supportive of the idea, depending on how they can massage it politically, of receiving Gazan refugees. What would be the implication of the receipt of Gazan refugees by America? This is sort of Syria redux from a decade ago, but what the implication of choosing to do that?
Well, the main implication from a geopolitical point of view is to endorse the Arab worldview that they have no responsibility to receive refugees from the Gaza Strip. This is all but unprecedented that neighboring countries seal off the border and allow nobody in, especially in this case, when you have a shared language and a shared religion. You have a region, the Sinai Peninsula, that is maybe 2 times the size of Israel, which is largely open area where you could carve out 10 square miles right on the edge of Gaza, not giving the Gazans even Egyptian citizenship, but building medical centers there and apartment buildings there, and not transferring them because that's contrary to international laws of war, but voluntarily allowing those Gazans who sought refuge there to seek refuge there. This is the decent thing to do, the humane thing to do, and the reason I think that Egypt and other Arab countries don't do that is because they do not want to be seen as weakening the so-called resistance to the state of Israel and Gaza. They need the Gazans there to keep up the fight against the Jewish state.
Yeah, could it also be that they, at least in part, that they feel no need to import Hamas or Hamas sympathizers either?
Yes, there's some of that, but I'm talking about something more modest. Open up a space of 10 square miles in the Sinai, the northeast part of the Sinai, build fences around it, keep it as part of the border, but build there, right adjacent to Gaza, build medical facilities and build apartment buildings that would somewhat relieve the pressure on Gazans. Only allow in, if you want, children and their mothers, no men ages 18 to 35, the key demographic for Hamas fighters. So I'm not even going so far as to say full-blown refugees. Just give some territory. But even that has proved too much.
Peter Berkowitz, Senior Fellow at the Hoover Institution, former Director of Policy Planning at the State Department. You can find his writings at peterberkowitz.com. Peter Berkowitz, thanks so much for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Before you see it on TV, share it on Facebook, or read about it in the paper. Hear it here first. This is Chicago's Morning Answer. on AM 560. The Answer.
Hey, business owners, are you wondering how to grow your business? Do you need cash flow and a ready source for financing? Well, Signature Bank can help. Hi, Mike Gallagher here to let you know that Signature Bank's loan decisions are made locally by a team who knows your name, cares about your business, and is invested in your success.